I'm in Southeast Asia with my 1913 Bradshaw's Handbook. Published at the height of European imperialism, my 100-year-old guidebook will lead me on a railway adventure through archipelagos and peninsulas, dotted with hills, forests and paddy fields. I'll tour towering megacities and magnificent mosques. I'll encounter golden Buddhas and jeweled temples and experience some of the world's most spectacular and notorious railways. As I travel through the diverse nations of this vast region, I'll learn how they asserted their independence against the British, French and Dutch empires to become the economic tigers and dragons of today. My rail journey continues through Malaysia, which my 1913 Bradshaw's Guide unhesitatingly describes as Britain's most important crown colony in the Far East, including Penang, Malacca and Singapore. I began in the northern town of Butterworth. After visiting the island of Penang, I returned to the mainland to continue south to Taiping. I'll pick up my tour in Kuala Kangsar before visiting Ipoh and ending this leg in the cool air of the Cameron Highlands. En route, I'll tap into rubber's natural source. So with that incision, it's made the milk begin to flow quite rapidly. Find a British haven in the hills. The housing styles, I mean, this could be Surrey in England.
They built the architecture that made them feel at home.
And come face to face with an epic beast. I did not expect anything like this. It goes on and on and on. Kuala Kangsar is the royal seat of Perak State and home to the present Sultan of Perak. With beautiful palaces and mosques, it's an important and historic town with intriguing traces of Malaysia's colonial past. Indeed, the seeds of one of Malaysia's most important industries were sown right here. My Bradshaw's mentions rubber as a principal product, and this is one of the oldest rubber trees in Malaysia, possibly introduced by the English botanist Henry Nicholas Ridley, who's credited with stimulating the commercial production of rubber in Malaya and devising a method of tapping the rubber tree without killing it. He used to stuff rubber seeds into people's pockets in an effort to persuade them to grow the plant. And for that enthusiasm, he was sometimes called Mad Ridley. He was no such thing. He simply had a flexible mind which he bent to the future. The advent of bicycles, then motor cars, in Europe and the United States around the start of the 20th century caused a worldwide boom in demand for rubber to make tyres. Around the time of my guidebook, rubber had been planted in every state of Malaya. A vital resource in both peacetime and war, it became the driving force behind British imperial rule. Today, Malaysia is one of the world's biggest producers of natural rubber and exports rubber products to 190 countries. I'm meeting Dr. Puspa, an expert in rubber engineering. Dr. Puspa, we find ourselves in a very humid climate here, surrounded by a jungle. It's very impressive.
Yeah.
Why does the rubber tree thrive in Malaysia?
It's a very consistent weather. not a summer and not a winter. So it's a moderate temperature all the time.
How is the rubber extracted from the trees?
We have to tap the trees and we have to collect the milk. The milk is called latex.
How often is the same tree tapped?
They will tap every day. So rubber tree can be used for 20 to 25 years. You cannot get maximum milk when you have the sunlight. So when we want to extract maximum milk from the tree, we have to tap it early in the morning.
So the tappers have to be out there at night and they have to be going through the forest in the darkness and finding their tree in the dark.
Yes, this is the practice.
Over 100 years since Henry Nicholas Ridley established his sustainable tapping technique in 1897, the method is still used today. Hello, I'm Michael.
Hi, I'm Muhammad Fawzi.
Great to meet you.
Yes, thank you.
So will you show me what you do to get the milk out of this tree?
Okay.
So with that incision, I can feel now there's a great stickiness here in the bark, and it's made the milk begin to flow quite rapidly and tumbling into the pot. How long would it take for this pot to fill up?
Today.
It'll be done today.
Yeah, we're done today.
You come out in the middle of the night to do this when it's dark?
Yes, 4 a.m. You must need land.
How old is this tree?
15 years.
15 years. Lovely trees.
After that, cut and make furniture.
And these make furniture?
Yes.
And then you replant new rubber trees?
Yeah.
Fascinating. My first time in a rubber plantation. Dr. Puspa works for Gummi Metall Technik, a German company which manufactures rubber components, including anti-vibration mountings for trains.
This is the R&D department, and we do the rubber testing here, and also we are doing the testing on the end products.
So what sort of a product is this?
So this is called a conical springs, one of the part in the primary suspension system. We use it for Indonesia Railway.
So if I'm riding on an Indonesian train or a Malaysian train, I'm on top of a rubber spring like this.
Yes.
Now, something that interests me is that rubber is quite an old product by now. We have so many synthetic products.
Yeah.
Why do we still use natural rubber?
Natural rubber has its own excellent mechanical properties that cannot be met by some synthetic rubbers. So I will show you this.
Thank you.
I'm going to do a tensile properties testing with this machine.
In layman's terms, you're going to stretch it.
Yes.
Let's have a look. On and on and on it goes, getting longer
Yeah.
and longer. And on. That's extraordinary. There we are. At last, it broke. So, how many times had it been stretched?
According to the result, is 676%.
You couldn't do that with the synthetic material?
Most of the synthetic rubber are not able to achieve a very long elongation at break.
And that strikes me as extraordinary, that this wonderful natural material that is so abundant in Malaysia is so incredibly useful, and even now absolutely up to date. That's fantastic, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm leaving Kuala Kangsar to continue my journey. I'll visit Malaysia's foodie, hipster city, Ipoh. Then follow in the footsteps of British colonists a century ago to head for the hills. I'm on my way to Ipoh, and my train will pass through Sungai Siput, where in 1948, the murder of 3 European plantation workers by communist guerrillas sparked a 12-year war, known as the Malayan Emergency because of the highly repressive emergency measures adopted by British and Commonwealth forces. Unlike the conflicts in Vietnam, this jungle war was lost by the communists, largely because they lacked support amongst the Malayan population. It's a highly unusual example of a successful counter-insurgency operation. The electrified railway on which I'm travelling today began as numerous small lines built to run from tin mines to ports and cities. At the start of the 20th century, they were connected and extended, and by the time of my guidebook, a comprehensive railway network unified the federated states of British Malaya. The present station at Ipoh was built in 1917. Its gleaming white domes have led to its being known locally as the Taj Mahal. Not many of the old colonial stations have survived the modernization of Malaysia's railways, but this one at Ipoh has, and I love it. Although such monuments from the colonial era remain intact, British rule did not go unchallenged. This lovely clock tower commemorates James W.W. Birch, who was appointed by the British government their first resident in the Sultanate of Perak. He was not universally popular. In his bath on his boat one day, he was speared to death. The British hanged his assassins and, in revenge, dethroned the ruler. But in fact, the murder expressed anger against both the colonial power and the Sultan, who was seen as a stooge. Long before my Bradshaw's guide, it seems that it was apparent that imperialism would not last forever. Ipoh has a reputation as rather a cosmopolitan place. It grew up on the banks of the Kinta River, where I'm meeting Edin Koo, who writes about Malay culture. Edin, I've been in Taiping, where there was tin mining. Was there tin mining here too?
The entire Kinta Valley, of which Taiping and Ipoh are part of, was really evolved out of the tin industry. It used to be transported by barges along the river, and Ipoh was the center for its distribution.
Tin mining was strongly associated with the Chinese?
With the Chinese, yeah, who basically worked as the miners. By the 1920s, we actually had created a very cosmopolitan, multiracial culture. Quite economically divided, very specific roles for people. The British, of course, one of the great experiments in Malaya was this thing called indirect rule, where they ruled by proxy, a facade of local rule through the sultans mainly. But they brought in administrators from India and Sri Lanka, and a lot of the economy was run by the Chinese, and the Malays filled in basically this kind of aristocracy.
Ipoh, it had a particular reputation for what kind of lifestyle?
It was a very urban, quite sophisticated society. And Ipoh was the place to be. It was also the beginnings of popular culture. So you had the first cinema built in Ipoh, and you had cabaret culture. And by the 1950s, of course, you know, Elvis Presley, Nat King Cole, the Platters, and people who come from Ipoh are very well known to have that kind of very sophisticated taste. There was actually a great tussle about whether Ipoh should be made the capital of independent Malaya, but Kuala Lumpur won out in the end.
People talk about the food in Ipoh as being particularly good. What would be the reasons for that, do you think?
Cuisine is one of those areas in which we have completely immersed ourselves. Particular types of cuisine evolved from Ipoh, things like chicken rice, which was a peasant meal really that has developed into very, very high form of culture, much sought after. People come to Ipoh from all over. But there's Peranakan culture, which is a combination of Chinese and Malay cooking. And of course, there's the blending of all of these foods, which makes it extremely tasty and sought after. It's also developed a kind of hipster culture, which is a very positive thing because it means young people don't leave anymore.
I'm keen to try some of this famed local food, and I've come downtown, where one shop is causing a stir. Hello.
Yes.
You've been shopping at Guan Hiong?
Yes.
So what made you come here today?
This is a very famous shop in Ipoh town.
Are you from Ipoh?
I'm no, KL.
From Kuala Lumpur?
Yeah.
What have you bought? Let me have a look.
Okay, sure.
Oh, what are these?
Ipoh famous
Dried
biscuits.
meat
Yes.
with lotus paste.
Dried meat with lotus paste. Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Very nice to see you. You've been shopping at the bakery.
Yes,
What have you bought?
I brought the moon cake. This one is some yam and egg yolks.
Did you come specially to buy cake?
Yes, come specially from Kuala Lumpur to buy moon cake from this shop.
Why is the food special in Ipoh, do you think?
The factor is the taste. Original local taste that traditionally from many generations.
The scenes in this bakery are frenetic. There's a great crowd of people. There's a queue outside, people excitedly buying the produce. This is a bun fight. The Guanhyong Bakery is a family business, and Sky is the fourth generation to work here. Hello, Sky.
Hi, nice to meet you, Michael.
It's a great pleasure. What a successful shop. Why is it so successful, do you think?
Thank you. Basically, we are making traditional pastries that is loved by a lot of people. So the traditional biscuits is all handmade.
Tell me about the history of the shop.
We are established in 1918 by my great-grandparents who came all the way from China. When the business grew, my great-grandparents went back to China to bring his friend to help out in the business. Because during that time, a lot of people from China actually came over to Ipoh for the tin mining. But my great-grandparents, they decided to come over just for the opening up their business, the biscuit business.
Would it be possible to see how you make some of your
Yeah,
products, please?
sure.
Could this be for me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, what is it we're going to make today?
We are going to make our signature meat floss biscuit. So this is the pandan lotus paste, and this is the meat floss.
Meat floss.
A dried meat floss. This is our dough.
I'm not very good with dough.
Now we are going to roll it. Is to create the layering. So when you eat, it's much nicer to eat. Move downwards as well.
Like that?
And downwards as well. To roll it down. Okay, so now we are going to wrap it. We put some of the meat floss inside, in the middle.
You're a very good teacher. You spot every mistake before it happens.
Put one of the paste in the middle.
Really?
Then this hand, you put it here. Close the door. It's not easy.
No, not for a first time. Oh dear, not quite like yours, is it?
It looks easy, but it is not easy.
All right, we're getting somewhere now. Look, looks like a little onion.
So we'll put in the oven for 45 minutes, 210 degrees.
Splendid. Thank you. The bakery sells around 1 million of these traditional pastries every year. Well, Sky, they look good, do they not?
Yeah. Do you want to try?
Oh, yes. They're lovely and warm. So, here I go. That's sweet and savoury at the same time. That's delicious. No wonder you've got people queuing outside. Your great-grandfather will be proud of you, don't you think?
Thank you very much. I hope so.
In today's ethnically diverse Malaysia, cultural traditions are keenly observed and are encouraged in the younger generations. I'm told there's one important Chinese spectacle in Ipoh which I mustn't miss. This dragon is not only spectacular, one of the most spectacular things I've seen, it's also a miracle of organisation. 56 young people making it swirl and dance. Dragon dancing began as a prayer to the gods for a good harvest. Today it's a central feature in Chinese celebrations, and this dragon holds the record as the longest in Malaysia. It goes on and on and on, and it glows in the dark. It's a new morning, and I'm heading to a place that sounds as though it should be in Scotland. Gerard.
Hi, good morning. You must be Michael.
Good day for a drive, eh?
Yes, it is.
The Cameron Highlands are reachable only by road and are named after the colonial government surveyor William Cameron, who explored this region in 1885. 50 years later, the British developed this into the largest of Malaya's hill stations. Gerald, even though we've climbed quite a long way, still very thick vegetation, so the British had to sort of cut through jungle to make the settlement.
Yep, they had to manually cut. There were no machines then, so it was hand cut with hoes, clearing the path to put in a road to eventually come up to the mountains.
Arriving at the top, I can understand why they went to such trouble. Gerald, it is so much cooler and so much less humid. For the first time since I arrived in Malaysia, I'm not sweating.
And I think that's one of the main reasons the British came up here in the early 20s to set up all the accommodation around the golf course.
The housing styles, I mean, this could be Surrey in England.
When English came here, they missed home so much, they found a place with a perfect climate, so they built the architecture that made them feel at home. So Tudorish style houses with nice little gardens for them to sit out in the afternoon, enjoy the warm weather and sip their teas.
What sort of people owned these houses?
Most of them who built the buildings around the golf course were all business people, people who own properties and business who wanted to get away from the heat. So they came up to the Highlands and built their little getaway houses.
And these buildings, which were occupied originally by expatriates, mainly by British people, do they now belong to Malaysian people?
When the expats left the country, it was sold to Malaysian companies who kept it the way it was. For example, one company that did that is Ye Old Smokehouse Hotel. It is still run as a Tudor-style inn to cater for people who wants the feeling of old England.
So Malaysia, in some ways, has been able to make a kind of tourist attraction out of old colonial England.
Yes, now this is attracting a different kind of tourist, people who knows the value to sit out, to enjoy nature, to enjoy the fresh air. Sitting down like the good old days, sipping the cup of tea in the afternoon and having your freshly baked scones. So I think that's become a new lifestyle thing here now.
You make my mouth water. As the British elite enjoyed their home comforts in the Highlands, they realised that the climate here was ideal for another British essential. The British love affair with tea goes back a long way. There was a tea shop in London as early as 1657, and then the British East India Company had the monopoly on trade in tea with China. So when the British came to Malaya, it was just a question of taking a leaf out of an old book. I've come to Sungai Palace Estate, Malaya's first tea producer, founded in 1929. Ganesan, hello, I'm Michael.
I'm Ganesan.
Ganesan is a supervisor, and he's worked here for 46 years. Tea plantations are very spectacular here on the hillsides. What conditions does tea need to thrive?
Tea likes a good amount of rainfall and good amount of sunshine. It grows well with acidic soil and a good drainage. In Cameron Highlands, there's no problem of drainage because it's already 5,000 feet above sea level.
What is the history of this plantation?
Tea was brought into Malaysia, or rather Cameron Highlands, in the year 1929 by Mr. Archie Russell. So he came with his partner, Mr. A.B. Milne, who was a planter from Sri Lanka. Both plantations were the first plantation to plant tea in Malaysia.
Presumably when Archie Russell came here, this would all have been covered in forest.
Yes, it was all jungle, thick virgin jungle. They had to cut through the jungles. They really had a very tough time.
So the plantation as you have it today, how big is it?
Our total planted hectares is 1,200 hectares, out of which we produce 4 million kilos of tea per year.
Now what about picking the leaves? What kind of leaves do we need to pick?
We need to pick only the top 3 leaves. Put your fingers like this and you pick it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, to make good tea, you need the top 3 leaves.
In the time you've been in the tea business, how has it changed?
When I first joined these plantations, we were all plucking by hand. And as times changed, we had to introduce machines. It's a 2-man operated machine.
When is the tea plucking season?
In Malaysia or in Cameron Highlands especially, you can pick the tea the whole year round.
But this is a wonder plant, a plant that you
Yes.
can harvest all year. It's a
This
wonderful
is a
plant.
wonder plant. It has got a very long life. Tea plant grows more than 100 over years. Tea is not like rubber. After 25, 30 years, you have to do replanting. In tea, there's no replanting. As long as you pluck, it keeps on throwing out new shoots, or we call it flush. So we have to keep on plucking for it to get new leaves.
I would love to taste some of this tea.
Yeah, sure.
Boh is the country's largest tea producer and accounts for around 70% of all Malaysia's tea. So you've prepared a tea tasting here.
Oh, yes. Before we taste the tea, we identify the teas. Teh tarik is very strong liquor. You see the appearance is very dark and strong. And this is our most popular drink in Malaysia. Whereas over this side, it's all our garden teas. It's all like orangey. This because this has got less fermentation or semi-fermented teas.
What is the method by which we taste the tea?
You take a spoonful, you put it in your mouth. You don't take it in, and you swirl it around your tongue and cheeks, and you make a root noise. Otherwise, you don't really get the flavor and aroma of it. Spit it out.
That's wonderful. Now, teh tarik.
This is our teh tarik, a very strong tea, mostly preferred by Malaysians.
That was strong.
Strong.
I have to tell you, honestly, this one is my cup of tea, and this one is not.
Yes.
The British arrived as traders, but by the time of my guidebook, had established indirect rule by controlling the sultans. They exploited the tin and the rubber and created a home from home, sipping tea by the golf course amidst Tudor-style buildings. Alongside the Malays, they defeated communism after the Second World War and bequeathed to Malaysia railways and an educated elite of administrators. I've been struck by the multi-ethnicity of the country, which, if delicately handled, can give tremendous energy to Malaysia. Next time in Malaysia, I'll explore the capital, Kuala Lumpur, and learn the ancient art of pewter smithing.
Right now you can see is that. Yes.
I'll experience a city of striking contrasts. This is the most extraordinary sight to me.
Yes.
We're passing quite modest single-story dwellings, and here we have the Petronas Towers.
Yes.
And visit the former seat of British colonial power. How is this magnificent building connected to our story?
It's connected by scandal.
Beneficial for your brain next. We're in the Twin Institute with an experiment to find out the best way to learn a new language.